Great. Okay. We've got some participants coming through. We'll give it a moment. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Alex. I'll be the MC for today, but we'll just give it a little bit before everyone can join us. I'm actually going to launch a poll as people start to trickle in. Interested to kind of just get a sense of why everyone's here today and what you're hoping to walk away from today's session. It really helps us understand future state, some of the things that we're going to run. So I'd love to just sort of pick everyone's brain. So I've populated this poll you'll see on the screen here. We've got a question. What information are you most interested in learning today? So feel free to respond to that. I'd love to see what everyone has to say. We'll give it another few seconds or so before we kick off. Oh, I see some results coming in. Interesting. Okay, great. Again, yeah, what information is everyone most interested in learning today? The poll's there on the screen, so please feel free to engage with that. I'll leave it running for just a moment longer. And feel free to throw anything in the chat. I'll address that later, but the chat is open for anyone that has any questions or even just wants to say hello, where you're coming in from. Happy to see everyone here today. But I'm gonna end this poll and share some of the results. See, that's pretty interesting to see what we have going here. But first, what I really wanted to do was intro this session. So again, thank you everyone for joining today's session. Today's session is going to be how to lead hybrid human AI teams. Like I said, my name is Alex, and I will be your MC for today. Today's session is going to be centered around sort of the trending conversation that everyone's hearing regarding agentic AI and how it could potentially redefine workflows and processes. However, before we do begin for today's session, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping first. I'll keep it brief, I promise. Mics and videos are going to be disabled for attendees. Oh, I've got something in the chat, not able to hear. Can I get confirmation if everyone's able to hear me? Thank you,
You're
Chris.
coming through loud and clear for me.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Gladys, please let me know if you still can't hear. There should be the audio showing in the left bottom hand corner. Just make sure that's running and sound is on. But as I continue, and I can troubleshoot offline as well in the chat. As you can see, the chat is open. As Chris is presenting, we may not be able to read all of the current questions, so please just be patient with us. We'll ensure that we save some time at the end for any pending questions. Lastly, a follow-up email is going to be sent with today's recording. Additionally, slides from today's presentation will be included in that email and a post-webinar survey. You'll have a chance to win discounts on training upon submission, so keep an eye out for that. Now, with that said, I do want to just briefly introduce Ascendient Learning and just a bit about who we are as a company. Ascendient Learning, we have over 60 years of experience in the IT realm. We provide IT training that covers a spectrum of organizational needs at every skill level, essentially. We offer vendor authorized training and certifications for individuals. We offer customized courses for teams that we can be developed to accomplish project end goals and even specialized programs that tailored to organizations at scale. So in addition to sort of what we can do in regards to our training, we actually have a large library of resources, much like today's webinar. So we tend to see requests asking us to run a session internally for perhaps someone's organization, which we can certainly do. It's a really great resource. And honestly, a first step towards learning a bit more about AI and all the ways that you or your team can take advantage of it, or even your organization. So I do want to call out if that is something that perhaps you're interested in after you sort of get a taste of this after this webinar. I will be sharing contact info in the chat where you can get in touch with us and one of our instructors can connect you and we can discuss further. So happy to share a little bit more information about that after the call. But with that said, why we're all here today, I'd like to introduce Chris Pennick. He is our stream lead at Ascendient Learning for application development. And with over 30 years experience, Chris has provided consulting and security services to a variety of verticals, including the private sector, government agencies, and academic institutions. Included in his background, we've got programming, data science, AI and machine learning, system designs, software engineering, and cybersecurity. So with that, Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Hey, okay, great. Every time you bring that up, it just reminds me how old I am. So
Oh,
thank you. There you go. 30 years. Jeez. Okay. Let's see. Let me grab the screen real quick here. Just realized I'm not sharing anything yet. And hopefully you all can hear me okay. Let's do this real quick. So you are here to talk about humans and AI agents. And in that poll, I missed it. You took it away real quick there, Alex. Alexandra, you get a second just to, oh, there we go. That's what I was going to see. Okay, so I saw the biggest one, well, so it's 50%, was develop areas of opportunity to deploy AI for maximized productivity. Okay, pretty good. All right, and then there was the all of the above. All right, was the other 50. That's so there you go. So we're talking about finding models, frameworks to get started with this, to figure out how to build a hybrid team, figure out what the areas of opportunity are, and then any ethical considerations on that. Okay, that's a big one here. So excellent, thank you. All right, well, we've got that here. So what I've got is about an hour and a half. I'm always willing to stick around and talk here. And the way I've got this organized is we're going to do it this way. We're going to, look at the context and the setting of this, but we'll have at the end, I guess we could call it sort of a workshop. And let's see, how many folks do we have? I might even try. This is an experiment. I see 22. I could do this. I could probably put you into small groups for a few minutes, and we can try to look at your opportunities for this. Obviously, share what you can and don't share what you can't with your group mates when we try this. But it'd be nice to sort of go through the motions. There you go. Gladys, can you pick us out? We checking in there. Um, I'm going to try not to make this too much of a slide fest, but there's lots of ideas we have to talk about. And I'm not a great artist, I have to admit. So, actually, my daughter starts college next year to go to the College of Art, Savannah College of Art and Design. So maybe I can get her to do this sometime, make it pretty. So it is informative. It may not be pretty. So I'll sketch on occasion to make it up here. So first thing we have here is, like I said, there's about 90 minutes. I'm going to look at some practical frameworks, really just sort of give you guidelines and checklist, if you will, of what to go through here. Jump in. I've got the chat window open so I can see here. I know the audio is muted, but if you just let me know you have a question there, I can pay attention to that. We're not using the Q&A separately this time, right? We're just using the chat on this one. I'm gonna
Just
double
chat.
check.
Yep, just chat.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I didn't have to keep two windows open here. At the end, though, I will have dedicated Q&A. So, but feel free to jump in at any time. All right. I've got my eye on it right here. So when we hear that Gladys can hear, we'll be in good shape. All right. So the 6 kind of areas I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at the current landscape for AI and human collaboration. And, just a few years ago, it was funny. It's like people were like, hey, hear about this neat thing, ChatGPT or something like that. And now, I can't throw a penny at some place that doesn't use AI somewhere in there, whether you like it or not, kind of deal. So we'll look at some of the different ways that an agent can work there. And some of you may be familiar with ChatGPT, and I want to make sure that we're clear between a tool versus an agent. And we'll get into that in a little bit as we go here. Don't worry, nobody's required to program, but if I have any programmers here, great. I can talk to you about all of that as we go through. And we'll look at some of the models of collaboration between those humans and AI. If I don't see any of these current models as actual, what we talk about is So artificial general intelligence, in other words, we don't think anything's got sentience yet. As a matter of fact, Apple just published a paper talking about how it may look like they're thinking, but nah, they're not thinking. So don't fool yourself. But if we treat them, an AI tool, sort of in, and everybody's scared of being replaced by AI, but if we treat it like a person in the team, in the sense of, it has a job to do, it has responsibilities, it also has things that it needs. For example, the right data, the right type of instruction will probably work out better. So that's what that line 3 is about there. And we'll get into detail, I promise. And then we're going to look at just, the challenges on this. If you're a manager, you probably heard, oh man, the AI is going to take my job. And although sure, it's robotics in the car industry, replace some line workers, but I think what we're seeing more is a shift in what responsibilities are for the humans versus what responsibilities are for the machines, and that's really all AI is. It's a software machine. So we need to keep that in mind here. That we'll look at the challenge of convincing a team to have an AI teammate. And then I've got some real world case studies. The names have been obliterated to protect the guilty, I mean the innocent. Um, and we'll look at some of their successes and failures, just kind of an example within different industries. And we can go is I have quite a few. We don't necessarily have to go through all of them. Then of course I know that the big thing is like you really want to get to let's do some workshopping. Let's figure this out, either individually or in small groups. Okay. So where we are, right? We've got, you've got 70%, and this is a Forbes number here, about, organizations have some sort of AI in their daily workflow. I mean, if you do expense reports, there are, AI tools that are looking at the receipt and pulling out the information for the receipt. Expensify is one of them. There, if you are, using Salesforce, it's redirecting your request, or you've got job listings that are doing this. You've got AI filtering candidates for HR. All of this decision making authority has been sort of split between the machines and the humans. And it's not too different, though. Here's the thing, it's just accelerating. It's not different than where we've been before. I mean, your decisions, credit decisions, for example, have been made for years based on a database, right? Your credit score, which is sort of opaque. Most of us, unless we work for Experian, don't know what that credit score is doing. We just know that there's a number we're shooting for, and we hope that comes up. So transparency is going to be a big theme as we get through here. In other words, I'm going to say, let's not follow the financial credit scoring industry's model of having some magic number that comes from a database of anything and everything you've done with your credit. Let's instead make sure that humans on the team, they know, here's what the AI is supposed to do. Here's its responsibilities. Here's the steps that it's taking. And here's the results that we get for the next team member, whether that's another autonomous agent or whether that's a human. All right. So, like I said, it's going to take some adaptation. How do you lead a machine? How do you lead a piece of software? And that's what we'll look at. So first of all, we'll just talk about the idea of hybrid teams. And here's some silly, some nice, pretty diagram here of, we've got people in those AI brains working together here. And the big thing to work about is that often, there are interdependent workflows on this. So for example, I have sort of, when I put courseware together, we have an automated workflow that goes in and builds some of this. Yes, this deck will be available for you. Yeah, saw that there. And actually, just a side note, so Obaid or Obaid, hopefully one of those is correct. And if I messed up a name, I apologize. Names are important here. You'll have my contact information. So if there's something you missed and, hey, you remember a couple days later, hey, Chris said something about XYZ, send me an email and I can usually come up with, oh yeah, and send back the link or the resource. So yeah, please. Yeah. Feel free to get in touch. I am So, you know, so I live to learn is the way I like to put it. So, and then or learn to live, either way. There you go. So, the thing about this is that we're going to talk about what AI is good at, and as a good leader, that's what you want to do is put the AI in the things that it excels at right now or near future, and keep humans in the places, especially. And I saw many of you looked at like the ethical concerns, and that's is a tough field for AI. And we can talk about bias, and we can talk about how that works in there. Um, and especially, actually, if you come visit me, this is not a sales pitch here, but I'll make Alexander happy anyway. That if you come visit me in my data science course, we will look at how bias works into the system. I actually have a biased set of data from the housing industry that I use as an example to say, here's how it ends up in the AI model, because we started with data that was collected in, even if it was innocently, in sort of a biased way. So it was a data about urban housing versus suburban housing. And so, it definitely shows some interesting changes there. All right. So the thing we need to worry about then is we've got interdependent workflows. We've got complementary strengths between the humans and the AI. We've got the ability now that we can dynamically assign tasks. So, I can, if you've ever gone to a website these days, there's that agent, that little AI agent down there in the corner. Heck, go to our website. It'll ask if you need any help. And it can allocate tasks to a real person, or it can take care of things now. Actually, I kind of like that. I've used that with Amazon, for example, to return something. And the AI said, oh, well, since it was broken, there's no point in returning it to us. We'll issue your refund, and don't worry about it. Just dispose of it properly. And I'm like, oh, there you go. I didn't even have to talk to a person, because it just looked at the picture and saw, yeah, it was a set of candles, glass candles, and they were broken when they came. It was like, yep, that's broken. So here you go. And then, of course, who's responsible? Who takes the responsibility for that? Right now, it's the accountability. Yeah, we want to make the AI model accountable as well. And so, really, when you think about it, when you're making the AI model accountable, you're making the team that runs and supports the AI model accountable. So it still traces back to humans in the long run. All right, so here's my silly graphic here of kind of a spectrum of where we can put these agents. And let me add one thing. Sorry, I meant to start up my pen. Oh, there's a pen here. I can use this one. All right, we'll just sketch. And as I warn my students in every class, I went to geek school, not art school. But I do want to start out with this idea of an agent. And the big important thing about an agent is that it's autonomous. Okay. So it's different than just an AI tool. So when I mention an AI tool, most of you probably at some point maybe touched Copilot or ChatGPT. And so there's a little bit of vocabulary here we have to get out of the way too. So these are applications. Sorry, I'm running off the screen there. All right. These are applications. So separate that also from the word model. All right. So for example, ChatGPT, the model is GPT-4o currently. Yeah. Actually 4 point something is coming out soon. But if you've ever used Claude or Gemini, like for example, Gemini is Google's interface for this. Again, it's the application. The model is called Gemma. All right. And Gemma has different versions available to it. So the model is the training, the sum of the training and data that has gone into that particular AI model. That's the model is that collaboration of those two things put together. And literally it's stored in a binary, think of it like a program. Think of it like your Microsoft Word program. It's stored in, I can actually put the model into a single file if I wanted to. ChatGPT is just a web interface to talk to that model, to exchange information. You could do it without ChatGPT. You could do it with like a program. You could write a Python script. that talks to this model. So I want to make sure you understand, the model versus application or tool versus an agent. Now, if we go one more step with this, an agent, right, is now essentially, it is also in a sense an application, but it's been made to run on its own. If any of you have ever worked with, system administration, maybe back in the day, and or that you can set, like, think of it this way: you could set your run an email server on your machine, and that email server would be running 24/7, and that email server would be redirecting your mail when it gets into the correct spot. Okay, so what you have there is essentially something that, I mean, while it's not making decisions, it's just moving email around. It's autonomous in a sense, right? It's sitting there, it does what it needs to do. I think we're most familiar with, if you wanted something more realistic, self-driving cars these days, right? You've got, the electric cars, from the Teslas to the BYDs to the Rivian, whatever, that have their self-driving mode. That's essentially an autonomous thing, right? It's acting on its own. It's making decisions: turn right, turn left, avoid the cat that just ran across the street, stop immediately because there's a car in front of you. It's making those decisions on its own. It's not waiting for input back and forth. Okay, so I think, I know this is fairly intuitive, probably, I hope, but just to clear the vocabulary a little bit as we go. So then you've got, within the realm of autonomous agents, you've got just basic autonomous agents that, what they have is just autonomy, but they're not specialized for anything. You can go all the way to the extreme and have a specific agent. So for example, speaking of Expensify again, there is an agent that helps me specifically if I have problems getting it to read a receipt, and will ask me questions. It has expertise in who I can, what a particular expense could be billed under. All right. And so it's a useful tool in that regard. So, we've got, like I said, in between, and we'll talk about these in the next couple of slides. We've got different layers, collaborative, which again, see humans and the AI, versus augmentation, an agent that's designed to augment human capabilities. Think Iron Man. There you go. He's got Jarvis in the suit. How's that? That's an extreme sort of silly example, but I work with this daily. I use a tool called Claude and another one called Manus. And I use these two to help me build courses, to help me think through my thoughts. They query me and basically augment my sort of scratch outline. I give it an outline. Claude says, is this what you meant? We go back and forth in a way, but again, it's not really autonomous. So it's not a true agent yet. Where though there are, I'll show you some examples as we go through of, for example, especially like in the medical field, where they're helping you decide which specialist to go see. So expert systems sometimes fall under this here. Okay, so you had to suffer with my horrible sketches right now. I promise to try to, not make them too bad as we go through here. There's a lot of text, but we will go from there. Let's see. There we go. And moving on. Okay. So the first one, the autonomous ones, like I said, right? Just plain, they, in automated customer service routing, when you call on the phone to your healthcare provider, or you call, for your phone service, and they immediately direct. Why is ChatGPT so much slower than Copilot? That might just be a Copilot on, see, which Copilot though, Sherry? So it's a good question. And that might just be a local observance for you, because I don't know if I have the same experience, but it could be. There's a couple things involved. Copilot, some of the things in Copilot, if you're talking about Copilot, for example, that's built in or comes with Windows 11, you've got your answer kind of there. Part of it can run local. Okay, so yeah, see, that can run local as opposed to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, you're going through a web interface over to OpenAI's servers. They have to allocate an instance for you because they're basically providing that to everybody. Yes, email. That's one of the agents with Claude. Yeah. And we'll talk about now Claude though also has set up and Manus. Yep. And then it's Manus. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Manus Manus is still experimental. So and I have, as a matter of fact, the ugly sketches and drawings that you see, those were created by Manus because I asked it to help me out on those. And actually, I'll show you some examples where it did very poorly. So I decided just to keep them. I'm like, you know what? Let's show the state of this, right? So to the earlier question there, the big thing is that if you've got to deal with essentially going through the internet, then go to OpenAI. OpenAI has to find an instance available for you. Yeah, see, then you end up with all that delay versus local. And so we got another good question. Okay, how do you select the AI? Yeah, and so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to look at some criteria. So there are, as much as a framework, I'd almost rather use the guidelines. And Jamie, we're going to, and I hope it's Jamie or Jaime. I could be wrong. Correct me one way or another. I don't know, phonetic, either works. Okay, I was trying. All right, there you go. Because I know a Jaime, so I want to make sure I had the right one. And for all of these questions, they're actually kind of related here. Because the one is, Sherry, so if Copilot is faster for you to do the things you need to do, then that's probably what you want to work into your plan for some sort of hybrid team versus Emma, you were looking at Claude and Manus, and I really like Claude, but Claude uses a different model than Copilot and OpenAI. And then, Manus uses yet another model. And I will show you actually a lot of these things we can do locally. And so, Jaime, you're getting to the question of, okay, well, then how do we, that's the whole point of everything here is like, how do we select which one? And I will tell you, it's a little bit of a battle because it's a constantly moving target, right? They're always improving. Just when I think I found the one, hey, this is the one that's doing great. And then I find another one, oh, but look what, Gemini is doing now. Yeah, and then, but for me, I tend to fall back to Claude. All right. But that's because I've developed a way to work with it. So that brings us to the next thing. So if you're going to work with these either in an autonomous way or as a collaborative sort of tool, then you, especially for collaboration, you want to know how to speak your tool's language. One way to do this, just one, is something called prompt engineering. And you hear it all the time. People talk about, and they make it sound like it's such it is sort of a skill compared to, because I'll give you my simple definition for prompt engineering: learning how to ask questions of AI tools. That's it. How to speak to AI tools. It's like a language course. But what it really is learning the way that that particular AI tool prefers input. A lot of them, we write fancy sentences and stuff, and we like, help me find resources for planning my Social Security benefits. I don't know, something crazy like that. And as it does that, right, we write it out and we write it like that question, but there might be a better way to phrase that question. You could ask specifics of finding a resource. So for your people in this hybrid team, that's definitely a skill you want to have for them. You want them to know whatever tool you choose, here's a good way. Yeah, and there's plenty of resources. We do a course on it. There are places you can practice online speaking to the AI, right? Because it really isn't pure natural language that gets the best out of them. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll bring up some of the things I've been working with as we go through here. So moving from the collaboration to augmentation, all right? And, so for example, like Grammarly, anybody play with that one? Grammarly is sitting there, or actually in Copilot. You mentioned Copilot, you can sit there. Boy, if Copilot asks me one more time, I keep meaning to turn this off. It keeps asking me to rewrite my emails. So I'm thinking that maybe it's being a little judgy about the way I write emails. I guess I don't write them well enough for Copilot. So I may have to go look at that. But that's what we mean by the augmentation agent. It's running there, it's sitting there, and it's just constantly looking to give you a specific set of help on that. But the final step up that spectrum, as we're talking about, were these specialized agents. And I've seen this. So, for example, there there's a company. Oh, I can't remember. It was Siemens. Siemens with their CT machines, their computed tomography machines. So that it's basically a fancy X-ray, right? It's a three-dimensional X-ray. It's spinning around, and it's taking slicing images of whoever's in there. They've combined that with so normally you have, right, someone who works in radiology who looks at that and gives the recommendation or their findings to your doctor, your caregiver. Well, Siemens has developed an AI agent that sits there with the radiologist. So the radiologist does their report. The AI tool looks at it and does their report as well and compares their notes, the AI's notes, with the radiologist's notes, and comes back and says, agree, disagree, or yes, that's good, but maybe it's this, and you may want to, look for further studies. And they've been testing this for a while. And what they found is it's better at picking out those small cancers, that look benign. It's been very impressive that it's not replacing the radiologist. It's just helping the radiologist look again. Hey, what do you think about there? So in a way, it's not that it's a augmentation agent, but it's specialized for the medical field. Okay. So again, these are really just vocabulary words at this point. All right. All right. So why is it difficult to set these up? And it's actually something I'm trying to do right now with our own courseware team is develop some things to help automate part of this for us. And we do have, like I said, a lot of the build process now. We're trying to get it to the point where all that the instructor or the courseware developer has to do is dump the information from their heads, and then the AI tool can help them organize it, can help make it presentable, can do a better job of giving it graphics than I have added here. I'm still working on that one. That one's tough, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So the thing is that it's trust. So should you trust anything that comes out of? So speaking of Copilot and ChatGPT, do you trust information out of ChatGPT? That's a trick question. There you go. Anybody got an answer for that one? Yeah. Okay. So Brett's just flat out nope. All right. Okay. Brett and not everything. Okay. Sherry, I get big bold letter, capital letters, not everything. Right. It's tough. Right. With a grain of salt. Exactly. So it's just that. It's like, how do you know? Right. You can't over rely on it, but you can't ignore it either. So for example, I'm amazed at speaking of ChatGPT, some of its capability of doing what I used to do with data scientists in a notebook. It can do I can give it like an Excel spreadsheet and say, okay, give me some analysis on this. And it will do a lot of things on its own. And the thing is, it's just following code. It's seen examples of this kind of data before. It's following code on how to analyze that data and create the charts that we would normally create as our first step in exploratory data analysis. So the other thing is that, okay, so if normally I used to do that with a human, how do I measure the performance of that? You got to come up with some sort of new metric, because the metrics for a human's going to take longer usually, right? And then the problem is too, is that just like we found, this is going way too fast. So back to the earlier question I got about, why is this one slow? Again, it might be your organization. One answer to that is some organizations I work with, they aren't even allowed to get to ChatGPT. So it's the firewall blocks them. So it's really slow because it will never give them a response. They'll get, this website is blocked. Yeah, there are, anything that has to go out to the internet, and that raises then the other trust issue, right? What information do you give to ChatGPT? Do you give it like PII, personally identifiable information? I mean, I've got a bunch of people are going to go. Probably people are screaming right now. I don't know. No, yeah, never. Brett's in it. There you go. Exactly, never. So the thing is, if you can't give something like ChatGPT information, you might, for your team, look to running the models in-house. There you go. The illusion of thinking. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about, Emma. That's it. Exactly. Apple's like, yeah, it's a good read. You know, it's a little techie here and there, but it's a good read. So yeah, if you get a chance, grab through that. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So welcome to my life. I try to stay. I have like little news alerts and things. I try to stay as current as I can. It is a constant battle and I'm tired. So and then Alex, gets up and reminds me that I'm, been doing this for 30 years. So yeah, sanitize it or anonymize it. Or sometimes Brett makes a very good point. We sanitize this info, or the better way to think about this too, or not better, but another way to think about this is we can also use synthetic data. So in other words, it's data that is realistic because it's based off of data, but as we said, we've anonymized it or sanitized it. So synthetic data is often being used to train a lot of things. Now I want to show you a little tool here. So just for a second here to indicate what this is. So this is something you can download for free called Jan. And yeah, just look for like Jan AI. And what Jan is essentially it runs locally on my computer. So, but Jan can use various models. So for example, here's Claude, here's Gemma, which is what Gemini is based on. Llama, which is some of the things that, Meta, as in Facebook, used to do. This is so DeepSeek, which is the one that I'd still be careful about, models from Google. Many of these models are open source. OpenAI, see, here's the GPT-4. There's the O3, and O4, I believe, is the most recent. So there it is, GPT-4o, like I mentioned earlier. So I could run, in a sense, ChatGPT by downloading and using this model. The problem is that's not exactly how some of these work. Some you can do that. Oh, jam out AI. Yeah, there you go. That's a decent one. Some you could do that, but most of these, you notice it says see remote engine. And so if you look, see these are all, I'd have to provide what's called an API key and then talk to it from there. But I can still, it's essentially it's just replacing the web interface for that. But you notice this one says local engine. And if I go to my local engine, I can pull others. Yeah. No. Oh, no, no, Jan. Sorry, I'll show you. Here it is. It's JAN.ai. I'll put it in the chat. Sorry. JAN JAN.ai. And actually, let me put that in our get this out of the way. There we go. Is it get the function key to work here? Is it F11? Yeah, there we go. Let me open up another tab here. We'll do it this way so you can see the same spot I'm talking about. So, chat with AI without privacy concerns. Now, that's a little bit of an extreme to say, but you can run it 100% offline. So when I make so this is what I'm talking about when you consider how you're going to add this AI tool to your team. You could in-house run something on some server there. So for example, I work with an insurance company and they have their own, instead of, chat GPT, they have insurance company GPT, and it runs entirely in-house. And they've built it based on some of these publicly sourced models out there. Another resource for your developers, how many of you have heard of Hugging Face? Does that one ring a bell? Maybe not. And again, I don't want to go too far into the development side of things. We're talking about leading and building these teams. I mean, that's our focus here. But that inevitably brings up the fact that, yes, we're going to have somebody do the work of either connecting us to the resource outside of our organization or build it inside. And so Hugging Face is sort of like a community library of all these different models and tools. So, Cohere is another company that does this. And so these are all the different models that one could, Salesforce has a model, Amazon has a model. In other words, it was trained with data that Amazon got. This one was, trained with data from Salesforce. IBM has various research models, and you could build then from here, a particular application inside. So you might have a model. So for example, these are all the models. Like if you were looking to build that Siemens, how they built that, as it says image, text to image, image to text, right? They want to say what's in there. So these are image to text models. And all of these, Microsoft's got models. We'll go through and notice there's 28 pages of these. So it's, if you're the developer, yeah, it's going to take some planning of figuring out, okay, well, do we want to do this? Or do we want to just go to, hey, OpenAI, right? And set up, their agent and do what's called their agent SDK, which is, here we go. So in other words, we can basically write a program that runs on our machine that's hands off data and request to their machine, see? And the agent can even delegate to other agents there. But it raises a really big word. So this is what I want you to think about as we're talking about building, especially when we get into this workshop idea here. Guardrails. There are what guardrails are, and I like this way, see? So guardrails are certain inputs basically become unallowed or get ignored. And I used to show this example, for example, with Grok. And Grok is from, this is Elon Musk AI, right? This is the X.com Twitter. And I used to ask it things like, and so the models change and those guardrails get adjusted. So how do you make thermite? Now, if anybody knows anything about thermite, it's going to tell me, well, see, I can't. Earlier versions of this, it would give me, I have an earlier one saved somewhere where it gave me the recipe. And it's actually fairly easy. If you go to a chemistry class in high school, you'll learn the ingredients to make thermite. But thermite is it's an endothermic reaction. It's very hot. It's so like, for example, you could melt through an engine block of a car with thermite, okay? But you see, yeah, see, it could be dangerous. See, extremely high temperatures, see, severe injury. So I can't tell you. That's a guardrail. So something happened between, let's say, version 2 and version 3, where they added this, probably because people like me were testing it to see, hey, what are the guardrails? If you ask, how do I rob a bank? Those kind of things are put in there. In your own organization, if you bring this in-house, then you'll want to decide what those guardrails are in-house as well. Right, so we've got a couple things we need to figure out. Do we want this in-house? Do we want to let somebody else do the service? How is this a single agent or is this multiple agents? See, that's the handoff. And third, okay, well, what kind of things are we? No, you're not allowed to talk about. That insurance company that I mentioned, that they tried to tell me that it had lots of guardrails on it, but I asked them what it was trained on. And they said, well, we used OpenAI's models to train it. And I said, okay, so it basically knows anything that OpenAI knows up to the point you got the model. And they were like, yeah, so there's like, oh no, it's only going to talk about insurance. I'm like, no. So I asked it, how do you bake a cherry pie? And sure enough, it had a cherry pie recipe. You get what the model gives you from the beginning. Okay. All right. So deep breath. All right. So this is all the stuff that's going to make it difficult for us as we go through here. So we're going to try to, let's look at an AI as the partner and figure out we're going to have to learn and we're going to have to learn a lot and we're going to have to keep learning. Right. So like I said, I learned to live. I live to learn. There you go. This is how it goes for me here. And then we're figure out your communication plan on this because it'll get pretty complex quickly. So I'm going to get you to that. I'm going to go a little bit more about how they work in the workplace, right? So, traditional software tools, ChatGPT is really passive. Um, or, if you think about it, because it's just waiting for you, it only acts when it's told. Versus if you built an agent on GPT 4.0, the agent's active, right? And it observes, it sits there and makes decisions. And again, see here, this is I'll just go to our website. Come on. Usually it comes up for, oh, of course, now it's not going to come up this time. There you go. Can I go looking in something? Oh, there it is. Just took a second. And there it is. And it's waiting for me. Welcome to Ascendient Learning. This is C, chat with us and see how this. But if I, this is the Ascendient Learning. Here it is. Tell it what I'm doing. This, is sitting there all the time, just waiting, running on our website. Well, facing our website so that anytime we need to, it can help you, answer some questions there. I think we've got the difference between the agent versus the traditional tool, right? As opposed to like a form that you fill out this form and we'll give you some information. All right, a little bit different, right? So we're shifting from the passive to the active. All right. The other thing is then, is we've got them within boundaries. If we're good, that's the guardrails I was talking about. And so, maybe, customer service is a common one, supply chain optimization, picking, maybe you've got a different vendor for something you need, financial transactions. I've worked with a few companies where, for example, to detect, if you ever traveled and Visa calls you up or your bank calls you up and says, are you buying skis or something when you're half a continent away? I used to travel quite a bit and they would, no matter how much I would tell them, they'd still send me the little warning, that I was trying to get cash out of an ATM in Tokyo or something like that. So you'll have to set the boundary for the AI, just like you set what's the scope of responsibility for a human, right? That's so, and make sure that, those boundaries are clear with the development team or the implementation team. The other thing is that, a lot of these, there are collaborative agents in here. They participate. This is really the collaborative. So the specialized agent that I mentioned about the radiology is also kind of a collaborative one. It makes a decision to recommend other studies. So it's like, sometimes a CT scan is not enough. And so it might suggest an MRI. Right. But like I said, it's included in their communication and their feedback. It's treated like a consultant for the radiologist. And it's an interesting thing, because that was Siemens' first concern with this was, are radiologists going to reject this tool thinking it's going to replace them? And the way Siemens pushed it out was it wasn't to replace, it was to enhance. It was to help them go through more. The human radiologist still had the final sign off on anything that came out of it. So, and again, that's a choice that they made on how to build this team. Okay. So research, finance, humans manage. Nowadays you can get, AI investing, right? The question you want to ask is, the AI making the decisions on whether to buy or sell, or do you have the final call on that? So we mentioned the augmentation, like I said, medical tools that flag issues for doctors. My pharmacist now, even, the pharmacist, have you noticed that it's not just the database, the database, when it sees two different medications, will tell you, oh, there is the possibility of this, and they'll relay that back to the doctor, and it's automatic in the system. The system's just, as you fulfill it, it'll let you know. So that's not exactly a complete agent there, but it's a start. And then we've already mentioned this idea of deep domain expertise. Uh-oh, what happened? There you go. Oh, that's Grok. Grok said, you're done. Are you? Yeah, I'm leaving. Bye, Grok. There you go. Grok jumped in. Sorry about that. I left it hanging there. So, but I mentioned, so the financial risk modeling here, medical analysis, cybersecurity. I use this with, there are even on the bad side. There's a thing called Hack GPT. Be careful looking that one up in your particular organization. But maybe on your own personal computer, you can check it out sometime. But there are these tools. AI is now working both the bad and the good side. And we can go into quality. So I think we're familiar with a lot of these. How about what do they excel at? What do they work with? And obviously, hey, 24-hour, 7 days a week, that sounds good to anybody in management, right? I mean, it's the whole reason why you have factories now that go for extended hours. Um, but there's a different side to that, and that's the standardization. That's the consistency. Whenever I use an AI tool, I tend to get the same results if I give it the same input, but that's not entirely true. And what I want to warn you about, okay, so I'm going to show you one other here. Let's do this with, let's do ChatGPT for a second here. Okay, so speaking of, and then we can look at Copilot as well. Oops, yeah. So when you are ChatGPT, you'll see that there's this personalization and so on, and connectors and everything along there. But one of the things that you can do with all this is you can provide custom instructions. And if you take a look at this, you'll see, so you can add a little bit more to every time I send a request, this is going through. So I like code, I like presentations, I like charts. I do data science, artificial intelligence. I'm working in the US. And so every new chat, this goes out ahead of time. This is sometimes called a system instruction. All right. And that's one way you could change this, and how you can help to, you can't guarantee consistent results, but how you can get more consistent results. But with that, if you go to, let's see, OpenAI Playground, you can't really get to this as easily through there we go. What? No, I had it. OpenAI Playground. This is not taking me to the OpenAI Playground. There's the playground, right? OpenAI platform. There we go. I clicked the wrong link. I apologize. So here, let me get you the. Gotta log in. One moment. Just a moment. Passwords are always helpful. Memorize that. There you go. So now you've figured out. Memorize the password. All asterisks. Nobody will ever figure it out. There you go. And then it's going to send me the code. I apologize, but give me 1 second while I get the code. Two-factor, make life a little bit nicer. Here we go. Just waiting for the code to come. Come on. Always takes a moment or two. Oh, no, never mind. There it comes. Here we go. And okay, so memorize this is the one-time password. Oh, and of course, it's always going away by the time I get it. I might as well wait till it goes to the next one. There we go. Okay. All right. So here we go. All right. And the reason I want to bring this up, and just very quickly for a moment here, if you'll notice here, so here's just like ChatGPT, it has prompts, but you'll notice I can pick the temperature and the number of tokens and the top P. These are settings. Temperature changes how random the response back is. So for example, if I said, so a higher temperature gives you more certain an answer, I guess would be the way to think about it. If I said, my favorite food is, most people out there said pizza. I don't know, I'm guessing. A few people would say tacos. Some people would say burritos. Some people might say sushi. I don't know. That's the top P. See the number of it samples the top answers. But there's one answer that's at the very, very top. And if you said, okay, 100% of the time, give me the top answer, that's kind of the way to think about temperature. It will always give you back pizza. That's consistent, right? But this can be adjusted within the prompt. This can be adjusted within the program that is using this model. So what that means is that consistency and standardization are tough to force. You must, do this via your program. You'd have to set in, or your tool. So, but the nice thing is, like we said, they operate continuously and they learn from examples, right? I can teach. I will often give a AI model a sample of what I would like a presentation to look like, or what I would like a document, how I would like a document to be structured, right? And those are tools we can do. The problem is that context, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's it. They're non-deterministic. Exactly. Amy, come visit me in some geek classes. Let's have some fun. That's awesome. Right. So they context, they don't really get context because context is based upon how far back they can go in the number of tokens. See right here, it says a token. Think of a token as roughly 3/4 of a word. Token is a part of a word, and it's the tokens that have meaning. So basically, AI models speak tokenese. How's that? They break words into tokens, and then they find associations between those tokens. We can get into the math. Don't worry about it. But you notice right now it says 2048. Well, that's roughly a page of text. Versus if I jump all the way up to here, it'll let me send, 8 times that in one request. So it's like sending you a little, pamphlet of in one request, in one prompt. See, so the max tokens that it'll look back at. That's the context. That's all it knows. It forgets anything further back than that. So think of it this way. It'd be like reading a novel and forgetting you're on page 10 and you can't remember what's on page 1 because you're moved past that already. See, so the token window, the context size is going to be very important. So they have literally mathematically, they have a problem with the understanding beyond that. Obviously, ethics, there is no ethical soul to these yet. We'll see. I don't know. And if you ask them for things that aren't, they're good at patterns, but they're not great at breaking those patterns, doing something creative outside of that. And then finally, anything that's ambiguous. Certain words, puns are often lost on AI. So it depends on where you are here. Of course, humans, it complements that. We're pretty good at context, except I don't know, sometimes sometimes I've been like at social occasions with my wife, and she says you didn't really get the vibe of the room, right? You weren't good at judging the context there, especially when like some bad joke just doesn't land right or something like that. The ethical reasoning, I think we tend to be very ethical, and we've got the creative and strategic thinking, and we can adapt and learn as well. So the two of us together. So what that means is you probably want to find some sort of clear boundaries for your agents, and come up with ways to monitor them with things that should be escalated to a human, right? Augmented agents, same thing. Specialized agents, we're going to focus on, integrating the AI into letting the human make the choice. And that's kind of like the radiology example, all right, that they go through here. So let's look at some models real quick. And I know I've been gabbing to you about an hour. I'm going to cruise through this because a little bit there's overlap in what we've been talking about. All right, so it breaks down to, right, we've got human-led teams, we've got AI-led teams, and we've got AI and human. Yeah, all these slides will be for you. Absolutely. And, AI and human working in parallel, but separately, so to speak, and then integrated. And this is what I'm trying to do with me. It's tough. And I work, that one gets cut off a little bit, doesn't it? Okay, there you go. So, each of these models has different oversight, different strengths, different, things. But these are like the 4 basic, I would say, right? And then we could do, blends or flavors from there, right? So when you're planning out your team, from the very beginning, you're going to say, okay, many of us are probably going to be maybe on one of these two over here, right? Something parallel or something integrated, right? Or what most of us do, hey, go look this up, go do this in Copilot or go do this in ChatGPT. That's human led. Even though it's autonomous, it's still we're directing it. Hey, ChatGPT, write me a resume, or write me an introductory letter for sales, or help me develop my marketing plan. Sure, that's human led. All right, so financial advisors, doctors using AI for diagnosis support. My doctor started to do this now with her notes. I find this fascinating. So she speaks rather than writing it down. She just kind of speaks with this little thing that's recording as we have our little meeting, our appointment, and then those get transcribed. Then she's got a human who looks at that and puts them back in. Then she gets a sort of a summary report with what she's been doing. Like, that's pretty nice. So it's comes all the way. Got to be careful with these lawyers doing this for research. You've heard of the lawyers that like submit cases that aren't real. Yeah, so be careful with that. Because, all right, so that word, because AI models, most of them want to help you. You might have heard the word to hallucinate, right? I don't, I'm not a big fan of that word because it implies that it thinking again. And we're, just like Apple has shown you, they're really not thinking. I like the word, and maybe you can help this catch on. I like the word fabricate, which is sort of like making things up, but fabricate, they literally just make the data that you want. They make the thing that you want. If I asked, if I asked ChatGPT to give me a history of Buck Rogers' presidential campaign, it might do that. Though we all know Buck Rogers is a fictional character and never actually ran for president that I know of. So, yeah, I mean, it's the problem. So that has to be put into your system checks for that, whether human checks or other systems. Because what's interesting is when you call them on it, right? When you call the AI on it, it'll say, yes, you're right. That's not correct. So I frequently put in my prompts that it has to supply outside resources. It can't just be from its own knowledge. You need to tell me where you got this information from if you can. And still, I get some interesting results. So, like I said, strategic control. So the other thing is that we'll want to do is, you might, it kind of flips the traditional hierarchy on its head, because usually we're used to being told, hey, as workers, those of us, lowered on the totem pole, we're used to be told we do this. Now it's flipped the other way, that the AI agent comes and we have to provide oversight to it. So real-time data, if humans somewhere need to monitor that AI typically. And so high volume sort of things that needs AI led. If, this just, well, the way we'll measure that is monitoring and escalation. So there are security companies, for example, cybersecurity companies that I work with, that they do this. The initial alert comes from the AI scanning, looking for vulnerabilities, looking for anything that looks like an attack, and then it gets raised to those above. There you go. All right. So next up, parallel. A good example of this is in the finance industry. I see a lot of where the AI is doing the data, the number crunching, and then passing that on to humans who can focus on strategy and security, or strategy and how are we going to invest in this, and so on. But usually, again, you need to come up with who was responsible for what, just like any other workflow. An integrated one, some of the best that I've seen. This is the holy grail for me, actually. Though I've been having a hard time trying to get really good with this. It's almost that you need some sort of shared dashboard that the AI can understand too, if you're really truly trying to go the full integration, so that both the AI model and the human can look and see the status of any task. But the thing is that that third bullet point is that the tasks really are owned by the team, the integrated team of the AI and the humans. So that task ownership changes based on who could do it better. Making a strategic decision, we'll pass that task probably to a human. Making a crunching data, sure, we'll pass it to the AI. It'll be right back. Generating some content, the AI could do that. Making sure that content is approved and appropriate for the audience that we're sending it to, let's give that to the human. And building all that into your system takes a lot. But for, like I've seen like live streaming marketing firms, that handle like people's publicity. They do something kind of like this, where the AI is helping along those lines. So the way we're going to do this, how we're going to set this up is we're going to say, okay, figure out, is it better? First thing is strengths alignment. Whatever we're trying to automate, whatever we're trying to build a team for, is it better for the AI or is it better for the human strengths? Next thing is, what's the risk? There are some things, even though the AI is better, I still don't want to put that information into AI's hands. So I might need at least a human there for accountability. The other thing is, will the task, this is important. You want your teams to get better, right? And learning is an important thing. And especially, I'm a teacher here. So will it help the humans build their skills, or can I improve the AI through feedback? Can I have it loop back in and make the AI even better? And if it's just a routine task, then typically I give that to AI. If it's novel, I usually give it to a human. So all this is going to go in our plan here, and I'm almost done through the studies. So we'll come up with a role. All right, we'll set the boundaries for this, and we'll then figure out, here's our standard on sharing that information and feedback. All right, so we're going to play this game in just a second. Hopefully I'm not trying to rush through these slides as much as I want to get you to, you come try it real quick here. So, the most common thing I've seen is like dashboards to do this, to make sure that you've got those feedback loops going in there. The thing is that for AI, there are many, many standardized outputs. There are also standardized tests to show how well they're performing. There are standardized tests to show sort of ethical ratings on them. And those are things that, in some of the classes that I'll mention, we talk about in where you get more hands-on with that. But I can also, point you to some resources on this too. And like I said, I'll give you my email address again. It's in the slides, by the way. Feel free to contact me after this if you're looking for other resources. I'd love to have you in other classes. We'll get to that. That's my job. That's what we do. But I'll definitely, stay in touch. Send me an email. I will gladly communicate with you on this. So the model is going to be the, next thing. So what's the right model? Are we going to use AL led? So again, I tend to think, that routine, let the AI lead it. Anything high stakes, that's human. Risk says right there. So it's task, so it's complexity, risk, readiness, regulation, and goals. I can't come up, I've been trying to figure out some sort of good, maybe if I change the order, maybe I can come up with like tiger or something, TGRRR or something, or, that doesn't work. So if you can help me come up with a really good acronym, I'd appreciate it. But, efficiency, that's, if the goal is efficiency, AI tends to do better at that. If the goal is for innovation, keep the people. So probably one of these parallel or integrated. Okay. If the regulation, there's no choice. It's if you are in a highly regulated field, or there's a certain like HIPAA for health and health industry, or PCI DSS for if you take credit cards, which is not really a law, but it's the payment card industry digital security standard that is basically says this is how you will accept a credit card. Those things need to be overseen by a person eventually somewhere. Even Visa, as I mentioned, that they do a lot of AI for fraud detection. There's a person at the top of that says whether they're going to, make a claim or pursue prosecution or something like that. So it's not the AI's choice. Okay. All right. So some challenges real quick, and then let's go play. All right. So the first thing, obviously, it's new leadership, right? The fact that you add AI is like, how do I don't want people to, the biggest one, probably the elephant in the room, is no one wants to make their team feel like they're being replaced. So I try my best, and because I'm doing this with courseware developers and instructors, that it is, trust that what I'm doing is giving you things to make your job easier so we can build more, better, faster, right? Oh, I got some at the end, Emil. Yeah, there's a couple books on human and AI collab. Yeah. I mean, because Emil, yeah, really, in this hour and a half, I just don't have enough time to go into all these. There's several directions we have to go. Yeah, they're in the end of the slides, and remind me again when we get there. We're almost to the. I'm going to get you working. How's that? I'll stop talking. How's that? Um, but the biggest thing is, like, it's you're going to have, you all need to know what AI can do before you tell your team, I want you to incorporate AI to this. I mean, I've seen organizations where the bosses basically come in and please, and I know this is none of you, the bosses come in and says, yeah, use ChatGPT to do this. Woo, hold up. Whatever this is, can ChatGPT do it? Two, do you really want ChatGPT involved in that? I mean, there's a whole lot of things that didn't go through that decision. So first step, build trust, right? You got to get them to trust, the AI. You also have to, too much, they over rely on it. Don't want to see, basically, that's just it. Have them be skeptical like you were. I asked you, what do you put in there? Make sure that your team knows that. But so trust is the first step, right? Build the appropriate trust. Some solutions, always, well, I'm going to put training in here, but training, transparency is always this. So I can, through, although Apple just published that paper that says we don't really know that they're not really thinking, which they aren't, we do know the steps of what's going on. And it makes better sense when you start to see. So, for example, they're really just matching up numbers on a lot of these. And so we can explain, and the same thing with like the confidence levels. I showed you like that deterministic setting, right? The temperature, those things you need to show to pull back the curtain for anybody who's going to have AI as part of their team. All right. So the other thing is change. Just people. This goes with any project, right? People hate change. I don't know what it is. I love change. Change means you're alive. But fear of job loss, right? Loss of control, discomfort, clear roles. Okay. So hey, then fine, celebrate those early wins and just as openly as you can address the concerns. And you can have, I don't know, maybe we should come up with a new career title, called AI coach or AI handler or something. I don't know. Agent agent coach, agent director, something like that. If you come up with a good one, let me know, because that's the way to get it, with people. As I tell my students all the time, I can fix the computer program, I can't fix people. So, a lot of this falls back to communication. So, and pilot programs are great. If you can do something small, low stakes, that's, start with a low hanging fruit. Hey, we're going to automate our expense reporting using this little AI agent so that you can get your expenses covered sooner or something. That great. Those kind of things really work well. The other thing is performance evaluation. You have to come up with new metrics, because the thing is, most of us live or die, right, in our organization based on that performance evaluation. And, it's got to be, since you've got humans mixed with AI, it might be hard to tell who did what. So I'll give you an example personally, how I've been, like, with my own management. I am very upfront that, hey, I use this tool for this. And in a sense, there's kind of a skill in that, to get out what I want. But then I go through, 90% of what I do, I have to go back through and edit anyway. Or I have to, go and, I'm the one who has to bear with the presentation. So if it doesn't work, I'm the one who suffers. But even, in some of the analysis we do there. So those metrics and figuring out, okay, well, so you might want to come up with a metric of AI human collaboration. All right. So the other thing, maybe process optimization. fewer errors. I mean, so these are just suggestions on there, and I'll spare you reading each one, but you know, maybe they get an AI literacy goal. That would be helpful. The more you can use the tool, great. We're spending the kind of money to get these AI tools. Let's work on that. The last one is skill development. I think one of the, and that's just it. Well, and my easy answer for that is going to say go get training. Okay, true. But Emil's got a great question here. Books, but organizations within your own thing. So I like making sort of champions within an organization so that they can do that sort of peer learning. Even a little AI, ongoing little webinars, lunchtime. Hey, here's a tip on how to use Copilot to, fix your emails quickly, or here's, for code, for people that work with code. Oh, our courses, we do courses on, using Copilot to write code, or in my case, I use Claude more, but same thing. And those are always, I appreciate it. I spent 34 years as a developer, and I can now build things that took me weeks. I could build in a matter of a day or so with the AI to help me do the scaffolding basically. And I worry about the details. So I don't think it replaces a programmer, just for the record, because it's programmers are not about writing code. They're about finding solutions to problems. And remember, it's not always great at that. It can spit out code. It can't necessarily spit out the code you need. Right. So making the decisions on that. Anyway. Last thing is, collaborate. Make a culture of this, but make sure, it's always safe. I like this one. It's safe to try, fail, and discuss AI. It's safe to try it. It's safe to fail. As I used to tell my teams, fail faster. All right. So that fail gets us to the next fail, which gets us to the next fail, which eventually gets us to the great success. All right. So, it's sort of the agile Scrum method on this here. But all right. The ethical alignment, you got to have a human on this one. It's about the only thing I can say, because you're going to find bias turns up naturally in the data. And we have an ethical course on this, and you can see, and I love, there's a demonstration in there of, you can watch how the data eventually creates the biased answer you get from the AI tool. So, right, AI doesn't have any moral judgment. It just spits out data from what it's got. So, like I said, you probably want to keep humans in that one. All right, so we got some case studies. I've been mentioning the case studies as we've gone. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to skip over the case studies because I'm realizing, I'm getting short on time. We can come back to them but I want to get you doing stuff here. So I would like to, if you're willing, if you want to try, we kind of play this here. Okay, so I have this sort of workshop. We have 25 of us. All right, and we can do this individually or we can do it together. I want to pretend, go through the motions of building our team, deciding, what we're going to use. Okay. So here's the step. If you ready to play along with this, you ready to try? And the case studies are in there. They'll be in the slides. I can go back to them if there's time, but I'd rather just, get you working with me. So here's the thing. We're going to design a hybrid team for your organization. Or if you don't want to share your organization, pick somebody. I don't know. And we're going to go through 6 little activities here. All right. And I think we've got the time. We can do this. So quick. But if you can come up with some sort of real scenario, great, and focus on whatever you could implement. And it's up to you. Do you have a preference? I can make little groups of 2 to 4 if you want, or we can do this individually. It's up to you. If I do, oh, we don't have breakout rooms. I apologize. Then that answers the question. Thank you. Okay. Too bad. So sad. Okay. All right. So, but they can still share this information. Okay. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. First activity, first thing we're going to do. And then, people can share and talk about it. All right. So here's the thing. All right. I want you to just sort of brainstorm for a second here. Take about 5 minutes. I'll ask Google to set a timer here. All right. And find 2 or 3 specific areas, 2 or 3 you have in your organization where some sort of human AI collaboration could give you some value. All right. you know, then to help with that, it's like, what takes up the time right now? What is consuming human time that probably could be done with some sort of AI or routine tool, and then the other thing is to ask, do you see it might help decision making for humans? Do you see where it might help with some consistency or speed? Are there any areas that you couldn't? So that they got some sort of constraints there. The augmentation, could help you. All right, and take 5 minutes. And if somebody's brave and wants to share, you don't all have to share, but open up, notepad, whatever, type out a few sort of, words for these questions. Give me, I'm gonna say right now, I'm gonna ask, like, Google do it for us. Ready? I'm gonna set a timer. Oops. For 5 minutes. And Google will do it. There you go. Okay. Yeah, DuckDuckGo's trying to see. All right. Go team go. And let me leave this on the screen so you have something to guide you here. All right. So I'm sorry we can't do the breakout room, but we'll make this work somehow. All right. And if 5's too long, somebody gets something before that, hit me out. Well, let's do it this way. Oh, there you go. All right. First one to get something for me, let me know. That's a good one. Oh yeah. Elena, that's a very good one. I don't know if everybody else can see this. Elena, is it okay if I share that with or it looks like it's only going to me right now. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay, so from Elena, I got this. Uh, I'm not allowed to chat with everyone. Thank you. There we go. I'm just a lowly panelist. I see how it is. Okay.
Apologies, Chris. You should be able to. I can switch that.
That's okay. That's okay. No, there you go. It's human assisted. There we go. I like it. So from Elena, we got the task that consumed time. All right, and her field of human resource leadership. So employee questions on benefits and stock plans. I know that personally. Okay, so as a matter of fact, I have had AI on my own machine. I fed it some 401k information that, about things available to me, and asked it, hey, what should I do with, previous IRAs and 401ks, and does this make sense? And again, it's merely to guide my thought process, but I it's a lot cheaper than going to the stock, a financial consultant. Not that I want to put them out of business, so, but I still ran it by my stockbroker friend for advice. Job profile manual. So Elena, is the job profile manual, is this describing, like, is it kind of like job duties? Is that what you're saying, or what someone would do, or is this for hiring? Job profiles that are manually created. Okay, got it. All right, so you could have it. Yeah, I like this. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Anybody else have a Got about 5 more minutes or 1 minute left here from hiring and career growth paths. Okay, excellent. There you go. That's awesome. Thank you, Elena. Oh, there you go, Brett. Study schedule. Oh, ooh, that one struck close to home, Brett. That's a good one there. What may I ask? You don't have to share if you don't want to. May I ask? Is this for a certification for you or for your employee? Cisco. Oh, geez. CCNA or CCIE or something else for the security. Oh, oh, dude. Yeah. Okay. Oh man. Yeah, you're talking. Yeah, it's useful. I've had some good ones. You might try that Manus that I mentioned too, just for the record. It just well off record here, but yeah. So Brett, could you take something like this though and automate that for your organization? Showing resources study for improvement. There you go. Sorry, the little timer went off. You know, in other words, yeah. See, ooh, incident management, Augusto. That's awesome. So, as in like security or HR or both? No judge. I know all right. Okay, well, these are great. So this is exactly it. Okay, so that's our first step. And like I said, these will be in the slides that you'll get. So, if you forget kind of like these steps that I'm trying to give you a structure to go through this. If you do some research, if you go out there, go Googling or go ask some of the AI tools as to, what there's no official here's how you build a hybrid team framework. So I'm trying to develop that framework with you, and this is great. I like the incident management. I like all of these. I like the study one. I'd love to do that one for like a whole organization. Like as part of HR, there's an AI bot that helps you plan your personal employee improvement, like getting your certificates, getting study schedules, finding resources for you that are offered from the company. I mean, that's see, you could blow that up. All right. So the next activity then, and I know we're at the 90-minute mark, and I have to confess something. I built this figuring I had 2 hours, but so there was a little mix between you and I there, Alexandra. I think you and I somewhere along the lines it went back and forth between the two. But regardless, I'm gonna if you can press on, I can press on. I got no place else to go except make sure. So here's the next thing. Okay. So now that you've got your first thing was your opportunity. Now that you've got your opportunity, let's think about then of the 4 models that I talked about, which one would lean probably the best one for you to at least as the first attempt, the first try? Would it be better to have something that was human led, AI led, something that it's they're working separately but in parallel, or that they're working integrated together at the same time? And some questions that might help you on that. Okay, is it routine or is it something that's novel? Like each time it's different. Are there what are the consequences, or if something doesn't you don't make the best decision, is there major consequences? What's the risk, right? Regulatory, so lawyers, I mean, no, lawyers, you cannot let AI write your case documents. You just can't. You can't let it cite, because it'll make up cases that don't exist. I was a legal specialist for the Army in JAG, Judge Advocate General Corps. And the one thing you can do, you can cite a precedent, a previous case, but that case had better exist, right? You can't. If you Google, you'll find like some lawyers that were turning in cases that didn't exist, as to defend their client or whatever. Organizational, right? How will your organization accept this? So take care, Brett. Okay, Brett, make sure you get this, and my email address is in the end of it too. So if you want to follow up on any of these, let me know. Okay, and love to see you in a course too. And good luck with that CCDE, man. Kick it. Impressive. All right. So take. I tell you what. Why don't, instead of 5, we'll cheat a little bit. We'll go because you were all pretty quick. In about 3 minutes, I had you So I'm going to set for 3 and see what we can get. Take your activity now and give me. I mean, this is actually pretty quick. The bite doesn't even really need 5 minutes, maybe, because you just kind of pick one. Which one do you want to try? Okay, so Elena had the job profiles. I like that one. Elena, if you were going to do this, would it be human led, AI led? Would this be something in parallel? Hmm. Here we go. I got a message coming through. Parallel? You think so? Okay. So the AI is working separately, but at the same time. Or would it be the human says, hey, you need to create a new job profile? Yeah. I mean, these aren't cut and dry lines. Okay, but parallel. Okay. I like that. All right. Well, then let me round through the next. We'll take. You think human first? Yeah. I'm thinking it might be human led. Tell you what, I'm not even gonna let's run with yours for a second, Elena, if you don't mind. And everybody else, if you have others, feel free to jump in a bit. But let me go through the steps with one, and then we can always roll back and try it again with another example. All right. So we pick our collaboration model. We're going to go with some sort of like a human led, human first sort of thing. Okay. Then the next thing, oh, and that got too long. I got to fix that slide. It's a little cut off here. We wanted to figure out task allocation. So this is the tough part. What we do is we would go through and figure out of the thing that so building job would you call it a job plan? No, that's the career growth plan. It was a job. I'm sorry, I'm already messing it up. Um, there you go. Career profile. Okay, the career profile. I knew the word career was in there somewhere. All right, so building a career profile actually involves many tasks, right? Not just one thing. Hey, write a profile, right? What are those steps? One, you have to research, what kinds of jobs are like it. You probably have to organize, you know, the information about that. What are the growth plans from there? Maybe I don't know if salary range things, leadership to get the skills. Oh, see, right. Okay, so breaking down that task, and this is I know I only stay 5 minutes here, but this is the part that probably is going to take the longest. Is compensation? Oh, see, okay, so that's what I was going to ask. Is yeah, what are the like the if it had the salary range or something like that with it? I imagine. So some of that could be optimized for AI, like figuring out compensation. We could get the AI to go look at like job sites and what others are offering, or Glassdoor or Indeed or something like that. And there are APIs to go and search that information. Human optimized, the skills, we could probably, both of those could go as a collaborative, I think, actually. The skills, because, the AI could come up with like a base and then we could pass it by a human for the human to add, oh yeah, or take away, right? To kind of line item it. And I think that would be a good. And I'm just guessing based on what I'm hearing here, but I want to show you how. So with each task, we're kind of going through there. Yeah, exactly. Right. Oh, exactly. And even some of this information is published in government records too. So data.gov, you might be able to find compensation ranges on some of these things. And then, as I said, yeah, definitely public sites, crowdsourced through, heck, even, I don't know, other monster.com, for job listings, things like that. Um, Trouble is like, so not everybody specifies a range, but nowadays that's becoming more common. So yeah, I agree. That's right. Get the AI did the crowdsource. So that's the question we're going to ask on each of those steps is what skills do I need for this task? What's the risk if it's bad? Okay, so if the AI is a little off on the range, unless it's really really off, it's probably not a big deal because it's a range, right? So the risk is kind of low of letting AI figure out about what would be an appropriate thing to offer. Um, and then what about the AI can definitely learn from all that data. The human, what do they learn from? I mean, eventually as they see these reports coming in, because again, I think I like your idea of the human led, because I think the final stamp of approval would probably have to go through somebody with authority in HR to say, yep, there you go. That's a good one. All right. So the output of this step is to make this sort of map of task 1, AI, task 2, human, task 3, AI, task 4. You get it? Take care, Jaime. All right. You get it? Next step, all right, is then we want to come up with how do we communicate all this information here? How do we share it? Where's it going to, how does it flow between the humans and AI? How do we, how do we pass a decision off to one or the other? And this is why I love dashboards, because you can, or tools like Monday.com, or yeah. Jeff, take care. The rest of this is at the very end, and there's resources at the end. So create a workflow, who's responsible. Exactly. That's it. Yeah. Human or AI or collaboration. That's it, Elena. That's the next step. All right. There you go. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Kenny, there you go. I'm losing a few. Okay. No worries. Well, then let me get to the next step real quick. So like I said, how's the feedback? How do you escalate? And then what has to be documented? And so for accountability. All right. Next one. All right. Set up a change plan. The challenge. What happens, when there's a technical, this is I call this the what could go wrong step. And so what's likely to occur? What strategies could you use to address that? How do you know? How do you know if you actually did mitigate? Like, for example, hallucination. What if the AI just makes up salary ranges? Ooh, that would be bad, right? So we'd have to figure out again how to make sure that's put in there. And how could we tell? Well, you'd have to see. So here's one way you could do it. I like the idea of multi-agent, and we didn't talk about that much here, but I like the idea of sort of pitting two different agents against each other. In other words, it's not one agent that goes out and looks for a range, it's two. And with maybe slightly different settings on or parameters on their prompt or on their request for that information. And then we get those two back, and you even can, I like to call it the judge. I'll go so far as to have a third agent whose job is to negotiate between those two come out. And it sounds complicated. It's not. For developers in the data science AI field to do this, but it's sort of like a meeting of the minds, and they will come back, and if one of them hallucinated, the other one, it's going to sort of look obvious to the judge, we hope. And then I still have to, unfortunately, with hallucination, I still have to put a human somewhere in there. So you need a sanity check with a human at some point that just, fed through the workflow, goes to the human goes, whoa, they're offering $1 million for data entry. Where is this job? I want this one, right? That one's painfully obvious. See, so the nice thing is, if it is a hallucination, the risk is low if it's close to what the actual range would be anyway. See, so this balances with risk. Yeah, and Elena, it's tough. So, but there you go. So there's our step 5. Then how are we going to measure performance, right? What are you going to measure? What's the baseline? Accuracy. There you go. You could keep track too with the, how accurate do we, how many different places do we find the same range? Did this speed things up for us? Do we get these job descriptions out quicker? Has it helped our revenue? Anything like that. For humans, hey, is it giving them a clear guidance on getting those? Yeah. Oh, Elena, I couldn't have hoped for a better example here. There you go. Yeah, employee retention these days. Everybody talks about job seekers are busy looking for jobs, but employers are busy trying to keep people in those jobs, right? Yeah, people jump and move, and my wife has been with the same company for nearly 2 decades. I have not. and it's interesting. I'm not used to that. My parents, worked for the same company. Well, he was a teacher and then he was an insurance salesman. So, but he was, a teacher for many years, and then he was that. There's like 2 jobs. That's it. So yeah, exactly. It's employee retention is tough. I think it's a great one. The accuracy rate for it, we could check against actual numbers. It's not SEC. It's employment. Social Security, don't they have data on rough estimates for job titles, but the problem is that they may not have recent ones. Yeah. Job promotions, growth revenue, BLR. Yes. Bureau of Labor. That's it. I knew they may have data, and we could probably find an API for that. But see, anyway, I'm actually putting that as a note for myself. Bureau of Labor Statistics API for myself. There we go. Because I would love to put that in as an example at some point. Data API. Yeah, here you go. Check this out. I don't know what it gives you, but present for you. There we go. I still cannot chat with everyone. Okay, I'll give it to. Why can I not chat with everyone? I'll give it to. There you go. I'll give it to. Now, can you share that with them, please? I don't know why I can't chat with everyone, but I can. There you go. So there you go. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics has an API. So in other words, we can teach, and AI can use APIs to talk to other services. That's the agent part of it. It can autonomously go through and say, I would like to, let's just make this big. I would like to get data and I want to find, this particular job title or something close. And so subjects, consumer price index, product, pay and benefits, employer cost for employee compensation, wage data by occupation. There you go. So and that's publicly available. So it could be incorporated into the system. Elena, I'll send you your check for helping me out with these examples. That's great. That's awesome. All right. So that was my 6 steps of going through here. Elena, thank you very much for giving me a good example to kind of bring up. If anyone else wants to talk about some of those examples, I'd love to sometime. You're welcome to keep me in detention. So with that, I'm going to put you in here. Yeah, see, that's it. Elena, that was well done. So here's the thing. If you've got specific questions, things like that, you want to work with me here for a little bit, I'm glad to stick around. And I just want to point out that in the slides, I do have some common questions that come out whenever I do this. And that is like, how do I know if we're ready for this? And I've got some common answers to that. What's the best way to overcome the resistance? Because, man, people will, it's taking my job. No, we're going to make your job better. That's the way we got to sell it, right? How do we measure that success? What we was just talking about with Elena. How do we decide, yeah, this is good, that this is tough, right? And then, as I said, there's a bunch. And someone asked me about the book earlier, and so one of them that I like is Human and Machine, Paul Dougherty, and H. James Wilson, and then the other one is Competing in the Age of AI. These are both, good books, leaders. This is, although it says 2023, it's still pretty good. From McKinsey. The take care, Kenny. There you go. You'll get this, and you can work from there. But like I said, hold on to these. There are partnerships. There are online associations on this. I don't want, of course, come see us. But if you want to do a little freebie course to get started, go for it. There are places. AI for Everyone is pretty good. It's the one I usually send folks if they're just getting started. But when you pilot something, but we do all kinds of workshops. We do courses, of course. Yeah, I got to sell us on a little bit here too, but I would love to even, and we work sort of pilot with groups. We design the training programs to support your rollout. So we call it just that, a program. And we do programs for many industries of getting their people, upskilled or reskilled as they need to be, and helping you develop your plan on how to, push this technology out for your organization. So with that in mind, it does have 2. That's just a review. What we talked about, some steps forward for you. Well, that's a weird column. Don't know how that happened. Sorry about that. But there I am. I'm in there. You could get hold of me. Feel free. But you will get, a follow-up from here. Okay. I tell you what, I am going to do those. I'm going to shush for a second here. The case studies are in here too, which, we kind of talked about those. But if you want to go back in a little more detail on those. Questions, comments, concerns, feel free to put me in detention for a bit if you'd like. In the meantime, I am going to pack this up. But if anybody wants to, so let me, yeah, there you go. That was the next thing. I was going to turn this over. Go
Thanks.
for it.
Really appreciate the presentation today. So I am just throwing something in the chat. I'm sending some links for our upcoming 2 webinars that we have going on. One is a continuation of AI, specifically AI projects and measuring the value within them. And then another trending topic, model context protocol. So that will be a June 19th session. Actually, excuse me, that the context protocol will be a June 23rd session. And then the generative AI projects is going to be June 19th. And then let me see if I can copy all of these courses that I'm showing on the slide here. I can. Perfect. Also in the chat are some related content that we have on our site. Some are by request, but if you're interested, I thought I'd throw the links in there for you to just dive a bit deeper into that. And just repeating the fact that we do offer dedicated webinars for you and your teams if you're interested. So that is also an option that we provide.
And I want to add one note about, so I avoided talking about model context protocol, what that is, so you understand why it kind of relates to what we're doing today. Model context protocol is a standard way for AI agents or AI tools to use other AI tools, basically for them to talk to each other, is the protocol for them to share information. So Anthropic, the company that created Claude, created this protocol, and now many other organizations are adopting it. And essentially, it is sort of a standard language. So I can say, hey, Claude, if you don't know how to do this, find a tool. In other words, another AI agent that does. So that's the group of minds, and it's and actually I do use it. Like for example, I let Claude access my file system in Google Drive. If you see that in ChatGPT, where it can get to Google Drive for you, or it can get to your iCloud, or whatever, that's actually an implementation of this, of building. We call it a server, an MCP server, and that actually might be something for those of you who don't want to go the full agent route. You could have guardrails put up for the AI, and in one agent that can talk to other tools and get the best results from those tools. So, all right, there you go. Obaid, hopefully we'll see you soon. All right. If anybody wants to put me in attention, I think we got a few folks heading off to other meetings, but I'm still here. And I appreciate it. There you go. Thanks for the help. All right.
Throw
And if
a
you want to get,
link. I just wanted to call out, I threw a post-webinar survey link in the chat as well. So if anyone wants to just take that, it helps provide better insight to serving you guys for these sessions and what you actually are interested in. And also you get entered into a drawing of either an Amazon gift card, 50% off a public class that could be used towards one of the ones that I've shared here today, or a $2,000 credit towards a dedicated class. So that's private training. So wanted to just call that out.
there you go. Yeah. Then come see me. Yeah. Um, all right. It looks like folks are
Oh, so happy to hear that, Hannah. Thank you.
wonderful. All right. Hannah, go build the plan. Let's make AI do our bidding. Come on. There you go. Let me, I need to get you the PDF of this. So I'll do that.
Perfect.
I'll just email that right after this.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, if no one's keeping me in detention, I appreciate it. It's all right. I'll go, I'm a little hungry for lunch too, if you are, but please come back and see us again. Elena.
Oh, we do have
Oh,
a
sure.
question.
Jan.ai. Yeah. Marshawn, I'd be glad to. Okay. So it'll only takes a moment. Sure. But even if it didn't take a moment. Okay. So let me get my screen again here. And if anybody else is interested in that, I'd be glad to go over it. Okay. So it's Jan.ai is really just as an example of the fact that you can run these things locally. So you notice it says download for Windows right here. And when I download this, what I get is this tool. Let me go to home. How's that? We'll do. So there we go. And let's go here. All right, so we'll start a new thread. And you notice it looks very much like ChatGPT, except that, or, Claude or Gemini, whatever you happen to use, except that instead of talking to OpenAI across the internet, there's my model is actually stored here on my computer's hard drive. It makes no internet call whatsoever. So we could ask it something just like we would ask ChatGPT. I don't know. Help me create a job listing for an AI human hybrid team leader. I don't know. We'll go with that. And so now everything is running, say, locally. It starts the model up on my machine and it's writing this out, and none of this is going out to the internet. So this model, though, the thing about Jan's really just kind of the interface to control these models. And you'll notice that there's a button right here that says Llama 3.21b. So it's saying, okay, team leadership, 8+ years of experience. Whoa, there you go. Experience in programming languages such as Python or Java. Okay. And see, it's just coming all up this, but if I click on this, do you notice that I have other models? Like this is Gemma from Google. Llama comes from Meta, aka Facebook. Mistral comes from a French company. The Alma Phi Wen is from is a Chinese model. So I could change, and so for example, we could change this even in this chat. And these are all local. These are all on my hard drive. But you notice there's a button here that says cloud. I could make this still work with go talk to Claude, go talk to Google, go talk to DeepSeek online, go NVIDIA, OpenAI, go use OpenAI. But what I have to add to it is I have to give it in settings. I would have to give it my key to connect. So, and I can pick and choose from there. See, so I'd have to give it my API key here. You get that from OpenAI. So it can work both locally. That's where I put the API key in. Sorry, right there. I can work both locally, or it could connect to the internet. Does that make better sense on it? A little bit. So yeah, the only real advantage is keeping, as long as you don't use any of these models that say that they use a remote engine, you're safe. You're not doing anything from anything outside there. And then this lets me go and add other models. So if I'd like to put other models on my device, I could click here, and you can even say, make sure they're compatible with my device, because some need like a fancy GPU. And so these are other models. And you notice I've got quite a few, but like Cogito, I guess. I don't know. Cogito. I have no idea. I don't name them, so I don't know how to pronounce some of them. Granite, that one I know. There we go. Deep Scaler. See, and they talk about what they're good at. So for a particular task, building in house, you might set up, or even see DeepSeek, the Chinese one that everyone's afraid of. You could download it into a sandbox in your organization and make sure it doesn't make any calls out to the internet, and check and make sure it's, test it, make sure it's safe and not phoning home to some server in China, if that was your concern. And so there are other tools that do this, but I find that Jan's one of the easiest ones to do this. Another tool is something called Olama, but it does that in the command line. So you'd have to do it in a terminal as opposed to this graphic interface. But Sailor, and it just goes on and on. OpenCoder actually is very good if you're wanting to make something that does coding for you locally. And then I could incorporate it into Visual Studio Code to help me write programs. And all of these are, so you could limit it by size. Some of them get as big as, nearly half a terabyte. So take up half your drive. So, but they're there if you wanted to. There you go. And if you want more about that, I'm actually trying to put, yep, that'll be the recording, because I don't think we've stopped it yet, have we? No.
We have
Yep.
not. Nope.
There you go. So it'll be there. for your review. And I'm actually working on an MC. I hope to work on put an MCP course and a local models course together. So maybe we have like a quick day of, hey, let's go play with something like Jam. There you go. All right. Good. You're welcome anytime, Marshawn, and hopefully I'll see you in a class or hopefully soon. Take care. Anybody else gonna put me in detention? We're good. Otherwise, we'll make sure you get the recording, make sure you get the slides, and hopefully I see you all again soon. There you go. Well, thank you, everybody. Elena and everybody who helped out. Appreciate it. All the questions, Emil, Gladys, your comments earlier. Appreciate all of that.
Thank you, Chris, for running and hosting this. Much appreciated on behalf of Ascendient Learning. And also, as Chris had stated, we will be sending a follow-up email with the downloadable version of this presentation, the recording, the post-webinar survey link, and the follow-up classes. And of course, there will be a link if you were interested in a dedicated webinar. We will also have a contact us form associated to that email. So
Yeah.
expect that to be in about, 1 business day sent over to everyone. But with
Yep.
that,
There you
thank
go.
you, Chris.
Thanks, Gerald. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. There you go. Yeah, I love doing those dedicated ones. I've got a few of those coming up for various industries. All right. Good. Well, then, you want to push the magic button or shall I?
I can do that. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.